Hi, everyone. Can you guys hear me? We'll start as soon as Wayne joins. Thank you guys so much for joining.
I'm already here, Sahar.
Oh, awesome. Hi, Wayne. How's it going?
Good. How are you?
Good, thank you. So just to avoid the static and the feedback, I've muted everybody. So thank you guys so much for joining. In the beginning, Wayne's gonna have a lot of fun news to share with everybody, and then towards the end, we'll have a Q&A. So I'll go ahead and unmute people that want to ask questions. So this is just to avoid a lot of different disrupting noises. So thank you guys for joining.
All right. So how's everyone doing this morning? I guess I can't respond, but
I can unmute people if you would like.
that's okay. We're gonna get started in 1 minute anyways, and
Okay.
we can chatter with a broader, larger group of people in a minute. But those of you who haven't seen this place, it's the Berkeley Animal Rights Center. We got some vegan snacks behind me, logo for the ARC, and this is a place where we pretty much let every animal rights, animal protection, and frankly progressive group that wants to use the space use the space, because physical space in the Bay Area is obviously in scarce supply. So it's been absolutely instrumental to the work we've been doing and the work that other groups do in the Bay Area and beyond. And all of you are helping us support this place, because we have a great deal. The rent is $1,600 a month in downtown Berkeley, which is unbelievably good. Mostly because the center is actually inside this parking lot area, so all the retailers don't want this space. And also because it's owned by the government, and the government is a terrible landlord. It's dilapidated. The bathroom sucks. Sahar can tell you the bathroom is disgusting. You never want to use a bathroom in the parking lot of the Berkeley Animal Rights Center. But there's some local coffee shops. So when people come, don't worry. If you come, you will be able to use the bathroom. Just go to a coffee shop next door instead of the actual official bathroom in the ARC. But it is 9:30 a.m., so I think we should probably get started. As always, first thing I want to say is just thank you all for being kind of the fuel for this movement, for being our behind-the-scenes team that doesn't get the acknowledgement and doesn't get to do kind of the sexy, exciting work in the front lines, but really provides all the crucial resources we need, from the cameras we use to shoot our investigations, to the rent for the ARC, to even kind of these drums that we use at Actions when we get thousands of people on the streets. The drums that both the haunting and the official Animal Rights March in Utah were extremely powerful and attracted a lot of media attention, a lot of attention on social media. We would not be able to do any of that without you. But today in particular, I thought I'd talk a little about ALWC and then talk about a little controversy that erupted after ALWC, primarily caused by me. So, I might have to issue a little mea culpa on this call and get some feedback from all of you about how I should have handled a particularly sensitive interaction with James Cromwell. But the first thing is on the ALWC. So all of you probably know that the ALWC was, at least in our view, an extraordinary, unprecedented success, not just for DXC, but for the entire animal rights movement. We got 600 plus people registered, and about that many came out to Utah. And it's not easy to get animal rights activists and vegans to Utah, but we did it because we got a lot of support from all of you. And in particular, because it's so difficult to get people to go to Utah when it's cold and miserable and conservative in the middle of the winter, we used a different model of registration called gift economics. And gift economics basically is a method whereby, because we know we have a lot of student activists, we have a lot of activists who don't have a lot of means, and they're already going to be paying a lot just to fly out there and get housing. We let people choose what they wanted to contribute to registration, which is pretty risky, because this is a conference that costs tens of thousands of dollars. And we said, you can pay whatever you want, and it worked out. But there was a deficiency. I think we ended up getting something like, I don't remember the exact figure, but I think it was something like $10,000 in registration fees. And we were short tens of thousands of dollars for everything that we spent on it. The turkey rescue, this huge action in Smithfield, Circle 4, the largest pig farm in the nation and probably the world. All these things we had to make up for the deficiency. So it was great that we got so many people out. It was great that we used a novel model of trying to fund the conference that allowed many people. We had, tons of students from Cal right next door. Just hop on a van and go out to Utah and sleep on a couch at an Airbnb. Just try and borrow someone's hotel room or get a local activist to house them on their floor or their couch. But if we had charged them the actual cost of the conference, they wouldn't be able to do it. So many of you, while the grassroots activists who went out there, obviously I'm so inspired and moved by the sacrifice they made of going down to Circle 4, where it didn't just smell like hell, it felt like hell. We could hear hell. Many people were shaking just being there, hearing the mother pigs hitting their heads against the cage doors and seeing all those police officers and those security guards at Smithfield defend the facility, defend those mothers that we could hear. I mean, just 20, 30 feet away, we could hear them clanging against the cage doors. But all those folks, their inspiring work was only possible because of our monthly donors. And again, I cannot say more strongly how important both our Open Rescue allies, which is our biggest supporters, and then our monthly donors, our members, are, because we cannot plan into the future. We could not have even been able to say, we would not have been able to use gift economics at ALWC if not for the fact we knew we had a steady stream of support. That if push comes to shove, we needed to know that even if no one gave to the ALWC, even if everyone chose $0, which obviously many of you who came and many people did choose to contribute, which is great. But even if people didn't choose to contribute very much, and many people were not able to contribute that much, we would be able to pay out the conference. We would be able to pull it off, and we did. But specifically what happened there? Well, there's a lot of stuff that happened. Moby, the famous musician, was there with us and gave us a huge shout out and said, I'm going to fight with you guys when it comes to Angel, when it comes to Lily, when it comes to Lily's mom. I want to be there with you. And Moby came out and gave us a lot of support. A lot of our activists got to meet him. He inspired so many people. James Cromwell obviously came out, the Hollywood actor who's been in Babe, 6 Feet Under, American Horror Story, all sorts of major motion pictures and television shows. He was out there with us. But Ingrid Newkirk, the founder of PETA, joined us. Many other organizations were there. Marilyn Kroplick, the president of In Defense of Animals. And as with everything we do, one of our biggest priorities at DXC is to bring people together and make sure animal rights activists don't fight with one another. And better yet, the best thing to do is for us to work together and have a unified front against this oppressive industry that is doing everything it can to destroy us and continue to profit off the exploitation of animals. And the industry has recently put up some pages about DXC at a website called Activist Facts, you may hear about. Activist Facts has been put up as a website that basically attacks all sorts of animal rights activists. And historically, they've attacked HSUS, PETA, and they put up a long, long piece on both DXC and me personally recently that has all sorts of strange allegations against me. I'm surprised they haven't called me a lizard man yet, but I'm a terrorist, I'm a criminal, I'm all sorts of terrible things. But one of their hopes is, and we know this because we've seen their internal documents, and we're going to see more of them in the course of these court cases where we're fighting Smithfield and Whole Foods. One of their biggest objectives is to divide and conquer. They believe that if they can get the animal rights movement fighting amongst ourselves, attacking one another, that they will get away scot-free, and that's true. And it's been true of oppressive institutions that have been trying to stop social movements probably as far as social movements have existed, probably going back to the French Revolution or, the efforts to reform Greece by Socrates, that the powers that be understand that one of the best ways to get good people who are trying to do good in the world with other good people is to make them doubt themselves and doubt one another. And in the civil rights movement, COINTELPRO, the program the FBI started to try and crush Martin Luther King Jr. in the civil rights movement, when their internal documents leaked, and actually the internal documents, they weren't leaked, they were actually stolen. Activists had to go into an FBI office in the middle of the night. There's a great documentary about this. They actually snuck into this rural FBI office in the middle of Pennsylvania, knowing that they couldn't do it in DC or New York and LA. I mean, those offices are well guarded, but they found this tiny little office, a field office, that was still getting all the memos that all the FBI officers were getting. They actually picked the lock, broke in the middle of the night, and took all the files and pulled out a file about COINTELPRO, this program J. Edgar Hoover had started to crush the civil rights movement. And their two biggest priorities in COINTELPRO were, one, to destroy coalitions in the civil rights movement. They were terrified of the idea of all these civil rights activists working together. The NAACP, CORE, SNCC, SCLC, all coming together to work to change the status of people of color in the United States in the 1960s. And their second great fear, and the second thing they were trying to destroy, was charismatic leaders who are able to unify all these organizations. And so DXC, we understand this is the industry's greatest weapon, the FBI, and powerful institutions for decades have tried to use these tactics to try and undermine our movement. And we try to do the opposite. We try to build coalitions that create a unified front. And we try to empower and inspire, not just one, but two, but five, but 10, but 500 charismatic leaders who can bring people together, who have the experience and skill they need to walk into a room of activists who may not know what to do, may not have the skill or confidence to go out there into a factory farm and rescue animals, but bring those people together and lead them to go out to the front lines to take action for animals. So, and that's what we did over the conference. There were so many people who stepped up, so many people I was inspired to carry turkeys out, to do breakout sessions, to lead small teams at the march. The people who led the official Animal Rights March in Utah, which is probably the biggest march in Utah history for animal rights, were all new DXE organizers, with the exception of one. There was only one person who was a veteran. That was Rachel Ziegler. The other folks had never done anything DXE related before, and many of them had never even organized a protest or march before. And here they are organizing this march that gets major media attention, that has hundreds and hundreds of people. I think, our estimate is well over 500 people, maybe 1,000 people. It's hard to count exactly when you have a crowd that big. They got media attention from every Salt Lake City outlet, and even the governor, the political establishment in Utah, one of the largest farm states in the nation, was forced to respond and issue statements in response to this, which is amazing. But obviously the highlights of the action were going to Norbest, this huge turkey farm, and going to Circle 4, the largest pig farm in the nation, right before the holiday season. And I just want to say a bit about the turkey farm, and then I'll move on to an interaction with James Cromwell that was a little controversial. I want to give you guys a little heads up on and also get some feedback on, because I know Mick, my good buddy in San Jose, he was giving me some crap about it. So maybe some of you want to give me some crap about it too, because maybe I deserve it. But because I had an unfortunate interaction with James Cromwell, the famous Hollywood actor that I'll tell you about. But first things first, so, Norbest. So let me just back up and explain briefly what happened with Norbest. Last year, we released an investigation that was published in CBS News and dozens of other news outlets about one of the largest turkey farms in the nation, a so-called humane antibiotic-free facility. And we had been investigating this place for 6 months. Our activists have been going in. I personally went in and found animals collapsed on the ground with horrible sores all over their face. Animals who had been de-toed. They rip off the first 2 digits of these babies' toes the moment they're born. Animals who had their faces burned off so badly they couldn't eat and they were starving to death. And maybe most troubling to the public was we found animals with diseases. Horrible diseases like hepatitis, which is an avian disease that usually doesn't jump to human beings, but it could in theory. And the mass use of antibiotics, which means in a corporation that said we were not using antibiotics for all the animals. We're only using it clinically. When there's an animal that needs to be treated specifically, we'll give them some antibiotics. But otherwise, we're not using antibiotics on the 4 million birds who we slaughter every year. And we found documents inside the facility showing they were feeding all the animals penicillin and water. And all of you know, penicillin is, in many ways the most important antibiotic in the world. And that kids depend on penicillin. Elderly folks depend on penicillin. Many of you probably have depended on penicillin at some point. And when you constantly give low levels of penicillin to millions and billions of animals out there, guess what happens to the penicillin? It stops working. It stops working on the animals, which means we can't treat the animals anymore. It stops working on human beings, which means when human beings get infections, they are dying. And in fact, there are tens of thousands of people in this country already and millions around the world who die from antibiotic-resistant infections because of factory farms. So we published this, and it was huge news, and even the CEO of Norbest conceded that the footage we shot and our findings were deeply disturbing. They even shut down the turkey farm that we did this investigation that said, unfortunately, they restarted it recently, which is not that surprising. But around the holiday season last year, they said, we're just going to shut this place down, clean it up, figure out what's going on. But the result of that was instead of the government of Utah or the corporation itself making some changes and saying, oh, by the way, maybe it's not so good for us to infect our kids with diseases. Maybe it's not so good for us to rip the toes off of baby turkeys and burn their faces and leave them mutilated and cannibalized on the floor of a factory farm. They charged us. And I and 5 of my co-defendants have been facing these very serious felony charges in Utah over the past year as a result of this investigation. The indictment actually happened in May, so it's not an entire year. It's more like 7 months. But something else happened as a result of this investigation and this criminal case, which is shortly after we were indicted, I was in Utah, and we were doing a little vigil outside of Norbest. And, we had vegan cookies. You guys all know I love vegan cookies. I'm always hanging out vegan cookies. And I had my vegan cookies in my hand, and I'm outside of the slaughterhouse, just talking to some of the workers, trying to hand out the cookies and say, hey, you know, I know this place is probably bad for you, and I'd love to talk to you about your work and why we think we don't have to hurt these animals. We don't have to hurt you. Because they're actually just a couple weeks before I was out there at the slaughterhouse, contrary to my lawyer's advice, who told me stay as far away from them as possible. We don't need you getting any more felonies, so please stop going back to that slaughterhouse and that factory farm. You should not be doing this, but I did it anyways. And it turned out to be something very serendipitous, because not only did I have some great conversations with the workers, many of you have probably seen the live streams where I talk to the workers, and you know, it's astonishing. You can even talk to slaughterhouse workers, and you can see that in their eyes when you tell them, you know, how would you feel if it were your dog who was hung up on that assembly line? How would you feel if you were talking about 15,000 kittens crammed into this industrial shed where they're eating each other alive? And almost universally, even the slaughterhouse workers say, yeah, you're right, it's wrong. But the most amazing thing is an older gentleman drives out of the facility when I'm there, and I think it was May or June, I don't remember the exact date. He comes out and he looks a little concerned, but he looks friendly too, and he says, what can I do? You know, what can I do? I don't understand. I just don't understand why you guys are out here. Why do you keep bothering my business? It's hurting me. It's hurting my employees. I don't know what to do. This is an area of economic distress. I'm just trying to make a living. And obviously, you know, he's a very wealthy man. So, but even wealthy people, they often say, extraordinarily wealthy people often feel like, you know, they're just making it when they're making, you know, $20 million a year. I know this because I've worked with extremely wealthy people in the corporate sector. So, you know, and oftentimes they do have big bills. You know, they have their big mansions and cars and mortgages and 6 kids they're trying to send to Harvard or whatever it is. And he came out and said, you know, I'm in economic distress. The company's in economic distress, and I want to hear what you want. And I think to myself, oh, yeah, this is like some mid-level manager, and he's just starting to harass me. And he invited me into the slaughterhouse, and I'm thinking to myself, is he going to, like, kidnap me? If I walk in, because he said, only you are allowed and no cameras. He said, you're allowed to walk into the slaughterhouse. And if you guys know how big and scary the Northwest Slaughterhouse is, I mean, those of us who are at the LWC, you know, I think Sahar was there, and actually, Sahar, you weren't there. Never mind. You were there in live stream. You certainly saw it in live stream. You were there.
I was glued to the live streams. Yes, I was glued to the live streams, and I don't have too many regrets, but I regret not going. So, and family in town, but it's all about next year in ALC.
That's true. That's true. ALC is going to be just as epic. I might not be there with you. I mean, but I shouldn't even say that. Let's be optimistic and expect that I will win all the cases, and I will.
You'll be there.
Let's say I will be there.
Yes.
I'm going to win all these cases. I'm not going to be in prison. I'll be there with you in ALC.
Yeah.
But if you've actually been there, I mean, this is a facility. It looks like a military installation. There are these huge walls all around it. You know, they have a security gate and like this intimidating looking big guy named Brandon. I know the guy's name because I've been there so many times. He always yells at me. And he's looking there. I mean, it looks like he's the sort of guy who looks like he's got a shotgun or a rifle in his security, you know, tent or, you know, little security gate thing, or what's it called? Like just a little security, what am I thinking about? It's just like a little gatehouse, right? That guards the entrance to Northwest. And this guy who I've never met before, he comes out with kind of a stern-looking look in his face, an older gentleman, says, come in here, and only you can come in, and I can't tell you what we're going to do inside. And I think the other defendants are like, wait, I mean, I don't know. You can do this. The lawyers already told us you really shouldn't even be there if you're harassing the company. They keep telling you, you keep doing this, you're going to get shot. I mean, literally, this is what my lawyer in Utah, who's, you know, he's a 30-year experienced criminal defense attorney in Utah. He knows these counties very well, and he's telling me, stop doing this. You're going to get shot one of these days. But I decide in a leap of faith, because I think part of it was I could just see in this gentleman's eyes that he had this genuine distress in his eyes. And honestly, part of me just wanted to help him. I just felt bad for him. He was genuinely distressed about the fact we're out there damaging his business. And I thought, okay, this is the thing. When you see someone's hurt or angry or upset in some way, whether it's a family member who's upset, you're calling them out for eating turkey on Thanksgiving, or a person on the street who's yelling at you as an animal rights supporter for handing out leaflets or holding a sign. And this happens all the time. You know, someone walks by and yells, bacon, bacon, bacon. And I have found over and over again that the people who exhibit and express the most distress about animal abuse and about animal rights activists, who are most emotionally invested in like a backlash and trying to fight you, are often the people who make the best allies when you actually talk to them. Because the reason they're so upset about it is because they feel bad about it. And that's one of the intuition I had about Rick, and it turned out to be true. We had like a 2-hour conversation with him where he just basically said to me, you know, over and over again, that we're trying to do better for the animals. I do care about the animals. You know, I'm sad about factory farming. I can't say, there's some stuff he told me that's a little confidential about
his corporate masters. But one thing to point out is the farmers of this nation, and even the rich farmers of this nation, and Pittman and Norvest are big companies. Don't get me wrong. These are multi-million-dollar companies. They do tens of millions of dollars in sales. My guess is Rick's net worth is well over $20 million. So he's a wealthy guy. But compared to Jeff Bezos and John Mackey, this guy feels like an ant. He has absolutely no power, and one decision, basically one phone call from John Mackey or Jeff Bezos could bankrupt him, could literally crush his entire company. So these farmers, they actually don't have a lot of power. There's a big system around there. Costco, Whole Foods, McDonald's is a $100 billion company. Whole Foods is a $20 billion company. Amazon is a $1 trillion company. So they might feel very big, and we might think they're very big and mighty with their $20 million business. But Amazon is literally like 500 times larger than Norvest or Pittman. So the real powerful players here are the retailers and the politicians who control the entire system too. But the politicians, unfortunately, oftentimes are dependent on the donations from these massively wealthy corporations and these massively wealthy people, especially in light of recent Supreme Court cases, to fund their own election campaigns. So there's so much about our system that's driven by big money. And that's true of big ag and big food too, that the real power is where the money is. Honestly, we didn't even reach any sort of conclusion at the end of the conversation other than that we liked each other. And, I gave a talk at the ALWC that I think is an important talk, or the talk itself isn't important. You don't have to listen to me. It's the ideas inside these talks that are important. And the talk I gave was about the importance in social justice movements historically of turning an oppressive institution's pillars of support. You can imagine this kingly villain, this horrible tyrant who's standing on a pedestal, and it's supported by all these pillars. But imagine these pillars all have little wheels on the bottom, or they all have little people holding the pillars up. If you can pull out some of the pillars of the industry support and ask those pillars to support what you're trying to do instead, then the king and the tyrant will crumble. And the civil rights movement did this. They convinced people like George Wallace and Lyndon Johnson to turn away from segregation and racism and towards civil rights. The women's suffrage movement did this. They convinced many parliamentarians who historically had been great adversaries to women's rights to turn around and say, you know what, after talking to you, I now recognize that yes, women do deserve a voice in our political system. And the animal rights movement needs to learn to do this too. We need to learn that sometimes our greatest allies will be the people we think are our enemies. And there are two reasons for this from the scientific research and the sociological research on social needs. The first is, once you start convincing your enemies to support you, or your so-called enemies, because I think it's important for us, even just mentally and spiritually and emotionally, not to conceive of anyone as our enemy. The enemy is the violence. It's a system of cruelty that's hurting us and the animals. All the individuals caught up in this violence, even John Mackey, even Jeff Bezos, even Rick Pittman, they are all potential allies. They're worse neutral and potential allies. And every conversation you go into with anyone, you should always conceive of them as a supporter or a future supporter of the animal rights movement. But there are two reasons when you can convince some of these people who might be perceived as enemies to become your allies. It's so important to the effectiveness of a social movement. The first is when you convince someone who used to be an enemy to be a supporter of your movement, it suddenly allows you to convince many more people. Because after all, if even Lyndon Johnson, who is a dedicated segregationist and racist, can support civil rights, if even a conservative parliamentarian in early 20th century UK can turn around and say, you know what, I gave a speech 5 years ago about how women are beneath men, but that now even I recognize that women deserve rights and deserve the right to vote. If even a slaughterhouse owner and a factory farmer can say, you know what, I kill animals for a living, but even I think their lives should be spared around Thanksgiving. That suddenly legitimates the entire movement. When you go out and talk to your friends and family members, if you're talking to someone on the street and they're saying, you know what, I have to have a turkey. Turkeys are beneath human beings. I don't care if turkeys are being killed. And you can say, you know what, let me tell you something. There's even a turkey farmer who's turning around and saying the future of the world is animal rights, that animals deserve consideration. They are sentient beings who don't deserve to suffer. And if even a hyper right-wing, capitalist, Mormon turkey farmer is able to say, animals have feelings just like us. Animals deserve to be spared from slaughter just like us. What excuses does that give you? I'm just kidding. Don't say that. You should never say, what excuses does that give you? Because that's like a super passive-aggressive and is not likely to convince anyone to go vegan or become an animal rights supporter. But that's implied. It's kind of like that's what's going to go through their own head. They're going to say to themselves, man, I'm eating this turkey on Thanksgiving, or here I am, telling my vegan friend that animals don't have rights and animals, who cares about animal rights and who cares if they're being slaughtered. And I feel like I'm a progressive, I'm a good person. And even this hyper right-wing capitalist Mormon turkey farmer who's been subjected to all sorts of investigations for worker abuses, public health scares, animal rights abuses, is now turning and saying animals have rights. Doesn't leave me a lot of room, right? It doesn't leave anyone a lot of room, because the turkey farmers are changing. And if the turkey farms are changing, everyone's got to change. So it just expands the scope of our outreach efforts, because it shows that even the folks who you might think are our enemies are moving towards us. But the other thing it does, and this is also really important, and this was important for Lyndon Johnson and Martin Luther King, it was important for the suffrage activists in the early 20th century, is it not only legitimates our movement, it delegitimizes and delegitimates efforts to repress us. And one crucial aspect of this rescue was the fact that Rick basically came out publicly, even on Facebook Live, saying, yeah, I don't think these folks should be prosecuted. They're trying to save lives. I don't want these folks to go to jail. I think Wayne's a good guy. I've met Paul. He's a good guy too. Diane's, this wonderful woman in her 60s who's retired, who takes care of cats. I mean, she's not a criminal. She's not a terrorist. And when the rest of the industry and their government supporters are calling us, quote unquote, triggered terrorists and criminals and felons and vandals and vigilantes, and one of the biggest and most influential voices in the industry is saying the opposite, that suddenly undermines their efforts to caricature us as extremists, right? And so that's really important too. And that's what happened when JFK and Lyndon Johnson sat down with King, despite the fact that J. Edgar Hoover was trying to say, this guy's a terrorist, he's a sexual deviant, he's a liar, he's stealing money, which they accused him of. I mean, the FBI said all sorts of nasty and false things about King, and they'll say all sorts of nasty and false things about animal rights activists too. That was all wiped away with one swipe of Lyndon B. Johnson's pen, when Lyndon B. Johnson, who was a senator from Texas, a southern state that was a segregated state that had a huge amount of racism. Lyndon Johnson, one of the stories about Lyndon Johnson that's really cool and just kind of terrifying and hilarious and sad at the same time, is Lyndon Johnson was such a racist and he believed such racist tropes about black people in this country. He believed that all black people in the United States were scared of snakes. I don't know why he believed this, but he just believed that if you brought out a snake, black people will run from you. And he had this, I'm not even kidding, there's historical records about this. He had a snake, a live snake, in the back of his trunk at all times. And just in case there was a black person he needed to scare. This is how racist this man was. This is the man that Martin Luther King Jr. made friends with and said, let's work together on civil rights. And he convinced him to do it. And when Lyndon Johnson, the person who literally was carrying out a snake to try and intimidate and scare black people, said, you know what, black people deserve the right to vote. They deserve the right to be in our schools too. That delegitimated everything J. Edgar Hoover, Strom Thurmond, Bull Connor, everything, all the hardened racists in the South were trying to do, suddenly was destroyed because the person who should have been their leader was turning around and saying, no, I'm with the other side, guys. I'm not going to try and crush these people. I'm not going to send King to jail again. In fact, not only am I not going to send King to jail again, and King was arrested and sent to jail like 29 times over the course of a 10-year period. And, so I mean, people say, like, I've been to jail a lot of times. Let me tell you a real hero. Martin Luther King Jr. went to jail almost 30 times in a very short period of time, like 10 years. I've been an activist for 20 years. I've only been to jail like 15 times. So I've been an activist longer than King was, because unfortunately he was assassinated. And I've only been to jail like half as many times as he has. So I got a lot of work to do. I got to get thrown in jail another 15 times to catch up. But anyways, I mean, Lyndon B. Johnson, instead of joining his allies in the South and saying, this guy deserves to be in jail, he's a terrorist, he's a dangerous man, he turned around and said, no, I'm gonna not only not send him to jail, I want to work with him to pass civil rights legislation. That's how the Civil Rights Act of 1964 was passed. And so for us to get to the place where we have the same political power and the same opportunity to not just win over a couple key individuals, and that is what happened at ALWC, but frankly transform the entire system. We need to win over our enemies and not just our friends. And actually, last thought on this before I move on to James Cromwell, and I'm going to go over time. Hopefully that's okay. You all need to leave. Feel free to leave. But the last thought on this is there's also some really interesting research that do you all know the concept of frenemies? Maybe you can just shake. Do people know the concept of a frenemy? Have you heard of this? Yes, no? Sahar, do you know what a frenemy is? So there's really interesting research that shows that both individually and collectively, if you're trying to create strong alliances, trying to form alliances with your enemies is more effective than your frenemies. Because it turns out frenemies make terrible allies. What a frenemy is someone who you don't know where you stand with them. They're sometimes really nice to you, and they're sometimes really mean to you, so you don't know if they're a friend or an enemy. And it turns out this makes for terrible alliances and terrible organizations and terrible cooperation because everyone is uncertain at all times. You just don't know where you stand. So good allies are your friends. People support you, and they give you some critical feedback, but you never have to worry about them stabbing you in the back or lying about you or saying something nasty because they're just good people and they trust you and you trust them. But it turns out enemies are also good allies because enemies, even if they didn't like you and were trying to hurt you, you understood who they were and you knew where they were going to go. You knew where they stood, right? And if you can convince someone like that to be your friend, you still know where they stand because before you knew where they stood, you know they were enemies. And interestingly, a lot of people who are opponents to you, when they become allies and they remember, man, I used to not like Wayne, or I used to not like Sahar, I used to not like Paula, or Jeff, or Miko, or Sylvia, or anyone else who's on this call, they actually are recommitted and even more committed to defending you because they realized they had made a mistake in the past. But they thought you were their enemy, and now they're your friend. And many of you probably had experiences like this, where someone you had a big fight with, after you realize, we had this big fight, we thought we didn't like each other, but now we're friends, and now we're the best of friends because we've had this tough experience together. And the same is true of organizational alliances. So, my hope is in the future, this friendship with Rick becomes that sort of situation where the strongest coalitions are sometimes formed with their former enemies. And my vision is I'll keep talking to him. I'll keep inviting him to my vegan Thanksgiving. And he said, in Salt Lake City in Sanpete County, Utah, that someday he will come to my vegan Thanksgiving. My hope is that over the next few years, we continue to cultivate a relationship with one another. And one of these days, we just convince Rick that, it's time to get out of this business entirely. I don't want to just save 100 turkeys. I want to save 100,000. I want to save 100 million. I want to save all of them. And I could start by just transforming this business. Let's just shut this slaughterhouse down and let's build a new business together. And, we've got venture capitalists in the Bay Area who are funding all sorts of plant-based startups. My guess is you could transition that business with like a $10 million investment. I'm not saying it'd be easy to get $10 million investment to transform the business, but imagine shutting that factory down and making a tofu plant instead, or a seitan plant that makes just as delicious protein for the people of this country around the holiday season that doesn't involve any cruelty to animals. Imagine us just walking out, instead of just 100, just walking into that slaughterhouse and taking every single one of those huddling birds who live their entire lives in fear and just like taking them out to sanctuary, even building a sanctuary together with Rick on that very site. We planted seeds of that slaughterhouse, edible flowers, because we envisioned a world where someday we can come back, these flowers will grow, we can harvest these flowers and feed the animals and the human beings alike without hurting any animal. And that's just a beautiful vision. Like really, really, even just thinking about it, it really hurts me, the things that I've seen inside turkey farms. It's the one thing, like I'm a pretty composed person. The thing that still hurts me is thinking about all the animals we left behind at Norbest and all these other facilities. It's one thing that still pretty consistently makes me cry at night when I'm meditating or before I meditate. And I need to meditate because I need to make sure I transform all that sadness into optimism and hope. And in the conversations we've had with Rick, the conversation we had with the governor of Utah, the governor's chief of staff, those conversations give me not just hope, but confidence that someday we will shut down that plant and all those poor baby birds will come out and we'll go in and build something more beautiful and more just and more safe for the world. Okay, so that's the turkey rescue. And it was an amazing experience. And thanks to all of you who participated and supported that, because rescuing 100 turkeys was a big project that cost a huge amount of time and resources and negotiation, everything from the veterinary inspections we had to do. And another kind of cute and cool story was we spent so much time and a lot of money, honestly, making sure every single one of those birds had a veterinary inspection, had blood work. And because when you cross state lines, especially right now, there's these avian epidemics happening in the Western United States. Every time you cross state lines, you need this veterinary record saying, we've inspected this bird and they're not going to bring some sort of pathogenic disease into California or Nevada. And when we got to the checkpoint, I wasn't there myself, but John Fromar, who's a lawyer, and Zoe Rosenberg, who's the founder of Happy Hen Animal Sanctuary, were in the front car of this caravan of trucks taking all these birds to freedom. And they were so scared these birds were all going to get confiscated and killed because of all these avian diseases. And they had their records, but they were afraid that, some jerk ag inspector would say, these records aren't good enough, or who is this kid? Like, I don't trust kids, or who are you? You're not a veterinarian, you're a lawyer. And so until the birds actually got to sanctuary, and all of them did get to sanctuary, all of us were really scared. And You know, I got a call in the middle of the night. All the cars got stopped, and that terrified me. But it turned out to just be a traffic stop. It wasn't, you know, the cops confiscating all the birds. So apparently they like drove too close to a cop who was stopped on the side of the road, and the cop pulled over all the vans and gave them all tickets, which is annoying. We had done all this work to get veterinary inspection certificates, and we get to the ag checkpoint between California and Nevada, and California has all these avian diseases blowing up in poultry farms, and so we're so scared. And Johnny drives up to the inspection point. You know, like Zoe and him are basically shaking, thinking, "Oh my God, we have these 100 refugees who've lived their entire life in violence, and please don't let anything happen here. We've done everything we could to try and ensure we can get through, but we're still scared." And the guy at that checkpoint, he's like this. I hear he's like this burly looking, you know, security guard, border patrol type person, sunglasses. He comes out and says, like, "What do you guys have in those vans, huh? What do you guys have in those vans?" And they had thought for a long time about, and we had thought, what are we going to say to the ag checkpoint people? And we decided we just had to be honest. We had to tell people exactly what we're doing. So Johnny says, "We got 100 turkeys. We're taking them to sanctuary." And they just wait with, like, you know, their breath and their hearts beating really hard, wondering what's this kind of gruff security guard going to say. And the guy just breaks into a big smile and says, "Really? That's awesome. Go ahead." And just go right through the checkpoint. And he didn't even look at their certificates. We had spent all this. He didn't follow the law. He was so excited about the fact they're rescuing these 100 turkeys one day before Thanksgiving. And I told John and Zoe, you should have like talked to this guy because maybe he was vegan. Maybe he was an animal rights supporter. Maybe next time we don't have the vet certificate, we need to call that guy up and make sure he's the ag inspector at the borderline when we drive through. But we didn't do it. So anyways, but it was super cool. And Johnny was just like, Zoe and Johnny were like laughing about it and giggling about it for like hours. You know, the drive all the way back to Happy Hen. We're like, "Oh my God, I can't believe." Even the ag inspector was like, "Who cares about the vet certificate? You're saving turkeys. Go!" So that was pretty cool. But I want to conclude with some feedback and criticism I got, because one of the things we believe in at DXC, we believe in all our leadership should be accountable, and we believe, you know, disagreement is important. And I did something that many people think is a mistake, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on whether this is a mistake. But so many of you know James Cromwell, and many of you know that until very recently, all of us thought he was 100% vegan. And I was doing a live stream on the bus to Circle 4, or maybe it was back from Circle 4. I don't even remember which one it was, because I did so many live streams. They're all just one big blaze and, you know, miasmic goo of live streams. Like, it was just constant live streaming all out there to make sure everyone in the world could feel plugged in. But he told us that he still eats backyard eggs. And he said, "I know the chickens." And I think on the live stream, I heard him say this, and I was just like, whoa. I was a little surprised because, you know, he says he's vegan, and everywhere we hear he's vegan. He says, like, and he says, I do just enough that so I don't feel like a hypocrite. And I know veganism is the future. It's the only way for us to save the world. But I need to eat some eggs, especially when I'm traveling, because of protein. And my response to him was, I just kind of like, I wasn't actually on the camera, but I think I did like nod my head and said, yeah. And I think I know a lot of people, including Garrett Francione, this famous professor at Rutgers, who I respect immensely, but who really does not like me or DXC at all. Garrett Francione made this video and was like attacking us and saying, "See, Wayne is supporting non-veganism. He's supporting people who eat eggs. This is terrible and it's unacceptable, and it's Wayne being a welfarist again." And even folks in my leadership team. I mean, Almira Tanner, who's a member of our steering committee, one of the elected officers at DXC, came up to me and just said, like, "Wayne, that was cringy. You should have said at least something, or at least you shouldn't have said yes and nodded your head. You know, even if you didn't want to confront him publicly right then and there." And we don't believe in calling people out, you know, whether it's a celebrity or an ordinary activist who just you're interviewing on a live stream. But she felt like I should not have said yeah, you know. So let me just walk you through my thought process on this, because, you know, I'm not sure I did the right thing. I'm not sure I did the wrong thing either. And this is actually a pretty helpful example and a helpful illustration about the way many folks, not everybody, the many folks in DXC think about social change. But the way I approach conversations like that, including not just with celebrities, although, you know, I mean, to be honest, yes, I was a little cowed by him. It's James Cromwell. The entire conversation I had with him that entire weekend, I was a little nervous and I wasn't sure what to say to him, because he's this important guy, and here's me, this, you know, radical animal rights terrorist, and he's hanging out with me, and, you know, so it's not, the power imbalance is pretty clear there. And although to James's credit, he was such a natural, authentic, down-to-earth fellow who talked to everyone, not just to me, but to everybody at the entire convergence. He was taking photos of everyone. But whether it's you're talking to James, a VIP, a celebrity, or just an ordinary person on the street, my approach to talking to people about animal rights and veganism has always been to find common ground and to appeal to the goodness in them. and empower them to be good and brave people and not to condemn them for their mistakes. And there is a space for education. Don't get me wrong. There is space for education, and we should educate people. When someone says, you know, oh, I need protein for eggs, and we know, I mean, many of us on this call know that we don't need protein from eggs. You know, I've lived without eggs for 20 years of my life, and I'm fine. But while there's space to educate people, you know, it's so important, especially when you first meet someone and you're forming a relationship. And again, I don't care if this is a slaughterhouse owner. I don't care if this is a person on the street. Or I don't care if this is a new vegan. For us to motivate people by encouraging them instead of condemning them. When someone is moving in the right direction and showing the animal rights movement support, I think it's so important for us to use what we at DXC call the open model. And there's actually a blog post about this. It's called the open model. If you Google the open model DXC, recognizing that the individuals who are caught up in the system are often confused, they often lack education, they often lack support from their community and from the broader economic system, and engaging in behaviors that are in alignment with their values. And to actually change people and to change the world, instead of trying to convince every individual to be a vegan or as vegan as possible, our goal should be to encourage them and motivate them to support our challenge of the bigger system. Challenging McDonald's, Burger King, challenging the USDA, the Utah Attorney General. Because the reality is every single person who's choosing to eat eggs or choosing to eat meat is doing so not because they made some sort of independent choice at the age of 6. They decided, do I want to be on the side of the animal abusers or the animal rescuers? I'll choose the animal abusers. They're doing this because there's a long history, a long pattern of powerful institutions that have a lot of money to make and have built a lot of power off of exploiting animals over, frankly, thousands of years. And those institutions are writing the laws of this nation, writing our cultural norms, constructing our food system in a way that makes individuals feel like they don't have a choice. So our goal as grassroots activists, in my view, should not be to quibble with individuals about the details about how they feel about how much protein they need or where they can get protein or whether backyard eggs are good or bad or somewhere in between. It should be to inspire them to challenge the entire system that allows any animal to be treated as a commodity at all. And so when I assess veganism and when I assess how someone has moved along the direction of veganism, my main question is, how much support are they offering us, meaning not me and DXC, but the entire movement and the animals, in this systemic challenge, in rewriting the laws of this nation, and transforming our economic system so people like James don't feel like they have to eat eggs, and transforming our schools so our school children and our kids aren't taught under the food pyramid that meat and dairy are at the top of the pyramid and are essential elements of a healthy diet. If we can change those ecosystems around people, we don't have to worry about changing individuals in front of us. We can treat every individual in front of us, even a dyed-in-the-wool steak eater, that they're an ally in this fight against the bigger system. And so every conversation I have, that is my goal, to try and convince this person, even if they're a hunter, even if they're a slaughterhouse owner, even if they're a dedicated carnivore or omnivore, that they can help us in fighting this system of violence against animals, human and non-human. And so that's my approach, and that's why generally when I talk to people who are non-vegetarian, non-vegan, I don't tell them to not eat eggs or not eat meat. I tell them to support the animal rights movement and end factory farming and, frankly, end animal agriculture. I tell them, let's pass an animal bill of rights that prevents every animal on this planet from being harmed unjustly. And as a consequence of that, obviously, if we ban every slaughterhouse in this nation, if we shut down every egg farm in this nation, people will not be eating eggs or meat because there will be no eggs or meat. But we can convince even the people who are eating eggs and meat, even the slaughterhouse owners, let's work together on a ban on slaughterhouses. Then again, that plays back into what I said at the beginning, that if we can convince even our adversaries to support our systemic challenge of animal agriculture, then we've won, folks. We've won, folks. So that's my mentality. That's my approach. I don't think it's always the right approach. I think there are times and places for direct challenges to individuals, especially powerful and influential individuals. And maybe this is one of those cases where I should have been a little more aggressive. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. And it's 10:12 a.m., which means I'm 12 minutes over what I should be at. I appreciate all of you joining the call, but maybe, Sahar, you can open things up. And if you guys don't know about the chat, there is a chat where people can ask questions. I'm looking at the chat now, and I'm seeing lots of comments. So feel free to ask a question in the chat. Also, feel free to just say something to the video conference, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have. Or any comments you guys have about all the incredible work we've been doing together.
Yeah, everyone has the ability to unmute themselves, so feel free to ask questions and unmute yourself.
So there's a great comment by Marley Delgado, and that I'm going to read. says, I understand that it must have been such a difficult thing to handle on the spot, and it probably blindsided you. I don't think we need to tear others down, but I definitely don't think you should have said yes. Maybe something like, I respectfully disagree with that sentiment, but I'm so glad you're here today and we can work together towards the same goal. I think that's a great comment, Marley, and I'll take that as advice for the future. And if I talk to James in the future, I think it probably was a mistake for me to say yeah. I just kind of instinctively said yeah, because that's kind of what you do when you talk to people sometimes, and you're not thinking about how you respond, especially if you're feeling kind of nervous about the interaction. Which the entire time I was talking to James, I was like, oh man, this is James Cromwell. I have to make sure, he comes back again and he continues to support us and he does another direct action with us. So that's a great comment, Marley, and I appreciate the feedback. Kelly is saying, I live in Salt Lake City. That's awesome, Kelly. And I don't even know if I met you in person, Kelly. If I did I meet you in person? Feel free to say it on the call or type it into the chat. When is the next event in Utah? Is there a schedule or anything? So Kelly, we haven't decided yet, and a lot's going to depend on the course of these court cases. If I have to go to trial in Utah, we'll probably put a big call to action out. I'd love to all of you to be there at the trial, because I'm sure there's going to be big actions and big demonstrations, and it'd be great to have trial support there. Because when the government sees the public's not in support of the prosecution, it shakes them. Just like the chief of staff. And we had a couple hundred people in James Cromwell with us for the Dead Baby Pig in the Capitol building. The deputy chief of staff, we've been trying to get the governor of Utah to do anything for animals for frankly, the past 5 years. I mean, if you talk about the animal rights movement at large, we're talking about decades of people trying to get someone to do something about Smithfield and Circle 4, because everyone knows it's a hellhole. And everyone knows, folks, this is a farm that was engaged in human slavery. They enslaved a bunch of human beings from Asia, brought them to Circle 4, forced them to work with no pay, trapped them in this compound, wouldn't let them even walk out and make a phone call, and someone had to run away and make a phone call. And they shut the place down, but they didn't even hold the company accountable. They just fined them, stopped them the arrest, and said, okay, you have to put a statement on your website that says you have a position officially against slavery, that we're not in support. So this is a company that's been violating human rights left and right. We can't get any accountability. We can't get the government of Utah to take any action or even make a statement. And probably for the first time in Utah history, as a result of those hundreds of activists who walked to Circle 4 and walked from the Capitol building with dead baby pigs in our hands, the governor's office released a statement saying, while we support farming, and, of course they're going to say something like that. When I first read the statement, I was like, okay, this is going to be another one of those, these completely irrelevant, deflecting statements just saying, oh, we're a farm country and we're a farm state and we support farmers. And they did say that, but they also, the last sentence of the statement was a short statement after this action, was very, very important. And they said, however, these activists and these individuals also have an important point that merits review by the government of Utah. And we're following up with this. We have grassroots activists now in Utah, and Kelly, if you'd like to support and participate in this, we're asking our activists to follow up with the legislative aid to the governor of Utah and say, okay, you said our investigations, our actions merit review, so let's do the review. You're already on the public record saying you're going to review this, so let's review this. Take a look at our photos, take a look at our videos, take a look at the diseases that we're finding in these farms, and ask yourself, can you support this? Do the people of Utah support this? So that's an important victory for all of us. But we don't know when it's going to be, Kelly. And it might be at ALWC next year, sometime in the fall. It could be in the summer. Who knows? Because it depends a lot on the trial. So Dogwood, what a great name, Dogwood. I take it that's probably not your real name, Dogwood, but I'll still refer to you as Dogwood because that's what you put into the chat. Dogwood is saying, are there any Utah politicos who might be helpful in your pending prosecution? Wondering if Senator Mike Lee might swing your way on this. Dogwood, it's a great question. And we did have one legislator in Utah, a state legislator, I think it's a state congressperson, named Angelo Romero, who did write a statement on our behalf, but it came out too late for us to include in our press release. But we are actively seeking out other politicians in Utah and frankly across the country who will support us in the face of these prosecutions. So it's a great suggestion. Kelly is saying our local legislative session begins in January. Probably not Mike Lee because he is a Republican, but Ben McAdams might help us. I'll help in any way possible. I know her. Kelly, that is awesome. And Kelly, I'm actually going to ask you to email me if you can, or put your email in the chat so I can follow up with you on this, because we definitely need support from the Utah political establishment. Because, I don't mind going to prison, but I prefer not to go to prison. So if we can win this case and I don't go to prison for 20 years, that'd be a good thing. So if you can help me out, that'd be awesome. Okay, cool. So I got your email, Kelly. I will email you after this call. Any other questions or comments? And people should feel free to talk too. I'm not hearing anyone talk. You can unmute yourself and say something on the actual call if you'd like, just like Sahar did. Is there anyone else who has anything they would like to say?
I'm me.
What's up, Paula?
Hello. Well, first of all, it was amazing. Well, I never celebrate very much because it's very sad what is really happening, but it was so good, the Thanksgiving, but the rescue was really, really, really a great thing. The work you have done, wow, I was seeing Zoe and all of you taking one by one those turkeys, and I could imagine that you were really tired at one point, but it's so good. I mean, that's really an example for everybody else who thinks that they are doing a lot of things to change their lives. No, that you're really what we want to see everywhere. Now people really putting their what everybody loves to have, but nobody really actually do. So you are, thank you for that. That's all. And then one thing about, I know that many people hate talk about religion. I am not religious at all, but I did study, and I actually work with Utah people for so long time at one point. And I know, because I have been among Mormons for a long time, that they do have in one of the main books that is called The Pearl of the Great Price, which they talk about that they shouldn't kill animals unless they have to survive. And because Utah is a Mormon state, I do believe that that actually the Mormons actually can become our main allies, because as they are actually trying to help immigrants, because from all the conservative people, they are the ones who are trying to, that are not supporting the immigrant law from Trump. Unbelievable. And I know I am not popular at all with these ideas, but they actually have in that book that they shouldn't kill animals unless their lives depend on it. Yeah. And that's not the case anymore. It's not the caravans, it's not the thing. And they have also that, when you were in the live stream doing that speech, that actually was really amazing on the stairs.
Yeah, the Capitol building.
Behind you, you had a picture of the caravans of the Mormons, and they did suffer a lot. They were prosecuted, exactly. So they can actually relate a lot through empathy to what is happening with animal rights activists and that. And I think we should actually look at it, try to take away all the ideas we have about religion, because basically religion is not about it. It's what was being written. And then realize that they actually should follow what they actually believe in, which is that they should respect all life. And they are talking basically in that book about a quasi-vegetarian lifestyle. So
you're right.
That's what I wanted to add.
No, I love it. No, you're absolutely right. And what Paula is suggesting is just a tried and true outreach tactic, which is, don't try and batter the person you're talking to or the person you're trying to change with your values. Find how their values fit into animal rights, and then elevate their values, right?
Yes.
And the Book of Mormon does include, and we've talked to people in Utah about the fact that there is a strict prohibition. I always frame it as, hey, I'm a Buddhist, I'm not allowed to eat meat, but you as a Mormon are not allowed to eat meat either. Look at your Book of Mormon. It says do not eat meat except in times of emergency, for necessity, when you need to survive. Yeah. And that's powerful. And I think it makes people feel like, okay, this guy's not trying to, give me some sort of hard sell. He's not sort of, evangelical. He's trying to convert me. He's actually trying to help me fulfill my vision of the world, which is great. And we should do that. And you're right too about the history of Mormons being persecuted over the years. And to the extent we can connect with even a couple of the jurors and say, hey, your people also were persecuted. You had to caravan from the East Coast to Utah because you were being killed, on the East Coast. Hopefully they understand why we feel persecuted as well, and that we, for doing the things we believe in, for upholding our faith. You know, my faith is a Buddhist. I have an obligation to help every animal who's being slaughtered. That is my duty as a Buddhist. I'm being sent to prison too, and I hope that allows us to connect with them. I appreciate the support and feedback as always, Paula, and I appreciate you saying that we're the ones who are doing the life-saving work. But I want to emphasize again, as I said at the beginning, that there are a huge number of people making sacrifices behind the scenes as well. And I've had donors come to me, you know, my friend Robin, who is homeless, you know, has been homeless for most of the past couple years. He gave $5. He doesn't have enough money to eat. And he gave us $5 because he said, you know what? I was not able to make it to ALWC. I couldn't pay for a ticket there. I can't even pay for my own apartment. I can't even pay for food, but I obtained this $5. I finally got a job. I'm going to give you this $5 because I know, even though I have so little, these turkeys have even less. And I'm going to give a little to them. And I know that this is the best time to do it because this $5 will turn to $10. And my voice is cracking because when he gave this to me, like, I almost cried because I tried to give it back to him because I said, no, don't. I mean, Robin, like, you've been on the street. Come on, dude. He wanted to make a sacrifice. He said, you know, I can't be there on the front lines with you this week. And I don't have the money. I don't have the circumstances. You know, I need to work things out in my own home. What I can do is I can make a sacrifice in my own home and give you these $5 that I really need. And that was as inspiring to me as someone walking to a police line to rescue an animal. You know, and all of you are doing that. I know all of you. Many of you are making sacrifices. I know there are very few people on this call who are wealthy, and you're still giving us $5, $10, $15 a month. Or some of you have given us $1,000 over the course of the year. They're Open Rescue Allies. And some of you are not very wealthy and are still giving $1,000 and allowing us to fund the rescue of one of these turkeys. Because every one of those turkeys, you know, we paid tens of thousands of dollars just in transit, cargo, and veterinary fees in the first day. And there's still 18 turkeys we're trying to find placement for. You know, we need to find people to adopt them, to take these turkeys into their arms, into their family, figuratively, if not physically. But honestly, if you wanted to adopt a turkey, we might be able to work that out too. But if you can't adopt a turkey and you don't have the right environment for a turkey to live in, you can adopt a turkey by funding their care. And that's what all of you are doing. So you should never say that I'm the one or we are the ones doing the important work of saving lives, Paula, because you are too. And everybody on this call is. Because it takes a village to make change. Every single person can support in different ways. Even before Robin gave us even $1, he gave us that $5 and it moved me. But even before he gave us those $5, he was coming to demonstrations. You know, he was arrested many months ago and he had a bad experience and he decided he couldn't come out to LWC partly because he had a bad experience getting arrested for animals. But Robin is out there. He doesn't have a home for himself. He can barely even support himself in getting food. But he comes out there knowing that the animals have it so much worse, and I want to come to a protest. And he comes to demonstrations. So there's so many ways to participate. He does outreach at AV Cubes with us. So there's so many ways to support. And it's not just the folks on the front lines. We get all the attention. But frankly, you guys are the ones who deserve most of the acknowledgement because the attention we get is already more than enough acknowledgement. So I always tell people, you know, don't thank me. Thank one of our donors. Thank one of the people who's doing community building, like Jackie or Kitty. Thanks, Sahar. You know, Sahar organized this call and made sure all of you have an understanding of what your dollars are going to. And we need people to do that to communicate with our donors effectively so they know what their money is going to. Sahar and the finance team never get people making posts about them, never get news articles written about them. But they do work that is just important to those Facebook posts and news articles as I do. So maybe we can give Sahar a shout out for organizing this call and for being so awesome today. Thank you, Sahar.
It's my pleasure. I'm so happy I get a chance to hear everyone and yeah, just kind of be in touch with people that support and fellow activists. So thank you guys.
And actually in that spirit, Celeste Rao is saying, we have a new movie coming out relating to veganism and other major religions. It is called A Prayer for Compassion, and it's at aprayerforcompassion.com. And Celeste is an amazing activist who's also supportive of DXC, who has this Vegan 2025 project where he's trying to convert the entire world to veganism, convince cities and municipalities to transform towards veganism within a decade, which is even more ambitious than us. You know, we want one vegan city. Celeste wants a vegan world by 2025. We want one vegan city by 2025. So Celeste, thank you for being more ambitious and dreaming even bigger than DXC, because there's not a lot of people can say that. You're one of them. All right, any other questions or comments or thoughts or criticisms? If you have any feedback for us, now is a great time to let us know what do you think we're doing wrong. Okay, David Pierce is saying, how important are the stories that come from your rescues that others can see? David, they are crucial. And one of the great things about this rescue is we supplied a media and communications package to all the sanctuaries the turkeys are going to go. And there are, I think, 20 or so sanctuaries across the countries where these turkeys will reside for the rest of their happy and peaceful lives. And not only do we have all this video footage and photos we've given to all these sanctuaries, just free of charge. We said, we shot this footage, but please take it, use it however you want for your own fundraising, for your own communications, for your own outreach. We also have this VR experience because for the first time in history, when we did the Norbest investigation, we brought this super fancy $20,000 VR camera that shot in 360 degrees. And we've given these sanctuaries the right to use our VR experience. So they can have the people come visit their sanctuary, put on the VR headset, see where these poor birds are coming from, then meet the individual who's rescued from that situation and hear their story and hear how they were taken out of a slaughterhouse with cooperation with a slaughterhouse owner. And hear about over the Thanksgiving season how everyone in Utah, and frankly, many people across the country and world, were talking about how we can make Thanksgiving a more compassionate holiday. And that's important. It's not just about the individual rescue. It's about the stories these 100 turkeys can tell across the entire nation, frankly, across the world, through social media and through people coming to visit these sanctuaries in the next decade or more. And so thank you to all of you who adopted a turkey, because you're not just helping us save that one life. You're helping us tell a story that will save, hopefully, many, many more lives. And David, you're part of that. So thank you very much, David, for that really great question and for supporting us. Okay. Any other questions or comments? And again, feel free to turn your mics on and say it to me through audio, because it's always great to see a real human face and hear a real human voice. So here's a great question. Matthew John Jenkins is saying, you talked about family that's not vegan and Christmas dinner. I'm just wondering, what's the best way to encourage them to have a vegan Christmas meal? Well, my take on this is the best way is to take the Liberation Pledge. And for those of you who don't know the Liberation Pledge, it has 3 pieces. One is to publicly commit to veganism, so everyone knows you're vegan. Second is to publicly say that all the tables you will eat at will either be vegetarian or vegan tables, that you're making a commitment to your fellow activists and the animals, that I will only eat at tables that are completely vegetarian or vegan tables. And third, talk to your friends and family about it. And that might seem alienating, it might seem very difficult, but it turns out if you make a public commitment to your community, it's kind of like a religious or commitment you make to your church. People respect that, and they understand that. And if you go to your friends and family and say, Mom, Dad, brother, sister, kids, whoever it is, I've made a commitment to the animals and to my fellow activists in my community of vegans that I only sit at vegan tables or vegetarian tables. And you can decide whether it's a vegan, vegetarian table yourself. This has nothing to do with you. I love you dearly, and I want to have a holiday meal with you. But I've made a public commitment because I'm trying to stop these factory farms from destroying our entire earth, including the earth that your kids and your family depend on to survive. I've made this commitment. I'm wondering if you can support me in this commitment this holiday season. And I'll do everything I can to make it easy for you. I'll make you a vegan meal. I'll pay for the meal. Let's all have a vegan meal together. And this has nothing to do with attacking you, because I see you as my friend, my ally, my family member who I depend on for support. And frankly, I'll need your support to uphold this commitment. This is a hard commitment for you to make. But I'd like your support on this. And the key thing about that framing of the Liberation Pledge is, instead of attacking your friends and family members, you're asking them, hey, can you join my team? I have a great team. It's an amazing team. We're defending the earth. We're defending life on this earth. We're defending you from disease and antibiotics. Can you support my team? Just one day this holiday season, can you support my team? And the vast majority of people, in fact, in all my experiences and over the past 5, 6, 7 years when I've taken the pledge, before the pledge was even a thing, it's always worked out very well for me. Because if you frame it as, I think you're an awesome person, you're such a good person, then I think I want you to help me in this program, this pledge that I'm doing. Can you work together with me on this? Because I wouldn't ask anybody. I'd only ask you because you're great. You're such an animal lover. You're such a good person. I know you're going to help me. And who in hell is going to turn around and say, like, oh, no, I'm a bad person. I'm terrible. I don't want to help you at all, and I don't care about animals. I don't care about the planet. I want my kids to die of diseases. So, heck no, I'm not going to support you. They probably will. And I'm not saying they always will. And it's really important for it to be authentic. When we make that ask of our family members and friends, be authentic in saying, I'm doing this because I actually do believe in you. I think you're awesome. And that's why I want to have a vegan meal with you, because you are awesome. And I know you want to support a better and more compassionate world for all of us. If you do that, usually people come along, but not always. And every family is a little different. And I'm blessed to have, a great family, even though my dad is a former vivisector and my parents killed chickens with their own hands back in Taiwan. They're great, great family members. And they've always, even when they really dislike my veganism and really dislike my animal rights activism, they still given me a lot of love and support. And I know a lot of you maybe don't have that. You don't have family members who do give you that personal love and support, even if there is disagreement. So it's tough. It's a great question, but you can check it out at liberationpledge.com, liberationpledge.com. And I highly encourage everyone to take the pledge, or at least to try to take the pledge. because it's a transformative experience when you take it. And if you do it the right way, it becomes this really empowering, positive, welcoming thing where everyone around you, it's kind of like, you guys have heard anything about Steve Jobs, the founder of Apple? The people around Steve Jobs used to always say he had this reality distortion field where everywhere he walked, when you came into contact with Steve Jobs, you started a conversation with him, it's like you walked into the future because he had this reality distortion field. The Liberation Pledge is like our own personal animal rights distortion field where everywhere we go, everything around us becomes an animal rights world. Everybody eats vegan, everyone supports animal rights, and it's just like we have this zone of influence around us. And you can also imagine it as like a physical distortion field where everywhere we go, we're correcting and destroying all the oppressive ideas and practices around us and transforming them for animal rights and veganism. And so Liberation Pledge to me is like a reality distortion field. But it's not really a reality distortion field. It's better to call it the reality undistortion field because it's not so much that we're distorting the reality around us. It's that we're removing the distortion of reality that's already happening and giving people the truth. So that's it. Okay, maybe one last question and then I should really go because I think the folks are, Jackie, you want to say hi to everyone, Jackie? Jackie is one of our amazing community organizers, another person who deserves a lot of support and love because, well, she has done some open rescues. She also does amazing community building work, which is crucial to everything we do because we wouldn't be able to fuel this movement. We need funds and dollars from people like you, but we also need activists who are cared for. And Jackie does an amazing job of just caring for our activists and making sure they feel supported. So thanks, Jackie. All right, one last comment or question. Nothing? Sahar? Anybody? Are you all bored? They're all just thinking to themselves, man, this guy should shut up. He's been talking for an hour. I'm so sick and tired of this. Can't believe I got dragged into this long, boring conversation. I'll try and do better next time.
It was amazing.
All right, well. I'm not seeing any questions, though. So just remember, feedback is a gift. So if you have a criticism or feedback like Marley had for me, you know, Marley gave me some really good feedback, and I'm not the only smart one. I'm not even that smart, to be honest. I mean, I'm a failed professor. If I were smarter, I probably wouldn't be an activist. I would have been a professor. So all of you have immense intelligence too, and we want you to harness your intelligence and give me some feedback and ask some tough questions. So, you know, I appreciate Marley giving me that tough feedback. Got an amazing supporter named Mick, who's unsurprisingly very successful in his personal life as well. I won't say what he does, but, you know, because that's his own private information. But Mick has given me some feedback. He couldn't join this call, but he told me to talk about the James Cromwell thing because he thought it was not good for JC's reputation that I was such a passive welfarist in the face of James Cromwell's very welfarist statements about backyard eggs. So, that feedback is a gift. So, you know, don't hesitate to come on one of these calls or send me an email or give me a phone call and tell me what I'm doing wrong because you guys are all super smart. And I'd love to get feedback from you so I can become better.
Matthew had a fun question. He said, what's your favorite vegan junk food?
Oh, man. You know, yeah. Jackie knows. We sell, it's any sort of like crispy chip. I love potato chips. And everybody in the house tries to rip them from my hands. And, you know, I'm still like in reasonably good shape. Like I'm not falling apart yet, despite the fact that I'm almost 40 and eating junk food all day. It's mainly because I meditate a ton and I work out a ton. But at this rate, I really need to stop eating vegan junk food. So Matthew, please don't encourage me. I'm trying to eat healthier. No, but there's one other question I'm saying. Peter's saying, how did the drop of the people seeking asylum on the border go? From what I understand, it went very well. Jamal and Jocelyn and Natan and a great group of activists in the Bay Area just went down to the border of California to try to get some food and clothing to refugees on the border. Seems like it's going very well, but I actually haven't heard from them since last night. But I did see some photos from them saying it was going very well. All right, I think that's it then. Thank you all for joining the call. Really, really appreciate all of you coming and joining this. It means a lot to me to hear from all of you and see all your faces because it just humanizes the entire network and the support we get to see all your faces. And I can see like Paula and Paul, trying to see who else is on. You can turn your cameras on too if you'd like. I obviously see Sahar, even though, for those of you who don't know who Sahar is the one who's using Paul Darwin Picklesheimer. So if you look at her her video feed, she probably does not look like a Paul Darwin Picklesheimer. You probably would not guess that's her name because she's not.
I would have a very long beard if I was Paul, yes.
Very long beard.
Definitely, yeah. You could definitely pinpoint us out.
Beard and looks much more elegant and beautiful. Not that Paul isn't beautiful, but so that is Sahar. That's not Paul. Don't get it wrong. But anyways, thank you all for joining this call. I'm literally, the tables are being turned away from me, so I have nowhere else to sit. So I have to shut down this call because I'm getting kicked out. But I'll see y'all next time, all right? Thank you so much, Sahar, and thank you all
Thank you guys so much. See you all next month.
Yep, it
Thank
means the world
you.
to me. You're all here with us. Bye, everybody.
Bye.